one day somebody does something unspeakable to someone else, to someone you hardly knew, and you do something about it because you can.
ABC 4 News brings us this story. McColl, South Carolina Town Councilman Harry Benjamin said he's been quiet long enough, and he's speaking out about why he believes the town's entire police department quit nearly 2 weeks ago. 5 officers, including the police chief, that's Bob Hale, resigned from the force. Quote, I wanted to get to clear my name. One thing, there's a lot of negative stuff that's been going on, and I've been getting a lot of messages from people that's out of town. Don't know the situation, been really rude to me, and I want to clear. I feel like there's a cloud over McColl about this police department, and I want to clear this up, said Harry Benjamin. He went on, after all of this is out in the open, if anybody has any questions, they're more than welcome to talk with me. Now, Harry Benjamin said he's been treated as the fall guy, and he's not going to take it anymore.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
He said right after he got on the council last November, he was appointed to help oversee the police department. Quote, I made it very clear. Are you sure you want me over the police department? Because I'm the type of person that I'm a numbers guy. I am a numbers guy, and I believe in doing what's right. And I never once accused anybody. And I want to make that clear. I never once accused anybody of something wrong, says Councilman Benjamin. Now, Benjamin shared with us a diagram that he drew showing 8 issues with the police department since he took office last November. The issues involve the following: overtime pay, lack of patrols, officers not responding to 911 calls, a child being seen getting out of a patrol car, microphone illegally placed in courtroom, former police captain arrested, conversation with the police chief and mayor, an effort to have Benjamin removed from council. Wow, that's okay. ABC 15 spent more than an hour talking with Benjamin regarding each of his concerns. He said he noticed around the first of the year that one particular officer, not the police chief, was always at the town hall and not patrolling in the community. Benjamin said he wanted to know why, so he asked the officer about it. Quote, he told me that he wasn't hired to patrol, and I want to be clear of that. His response was, I wasn't hired to patrol the town of McColl. His response was, I was hired for my knowledge. Whoa! Ego much? However, Benjamin said he requested financial documents regarding the police department's $423,000 and found that the officer in question was getting paid for a lot of overtime. That's for his knowledge. Quote, it puzzled me because at the same time I was also hearing this one officer was getting a lot of overtime, and I wondered why was this officer getting a lot of overtime sitting at City Hall. And remind you, this wasn't the chief, end quote. That was Benjamin. Benjamin said he started digging a little deeper, and that's when he discovered more officers were getting overtime. He said the city allots $25,000 for overtime, but the officers were on track to exceed that number by nearly $73,000. Quote, I pulled the report from my clerk for the quarter. For the quarter, 23 weeks. This information I'm fixing to give you, this person, this officer, had made $32,000. And this right here is facts. $32,800 for 23 weeks. Let me remind you, all of the officers were making $20 an hour. So their salary would have been around $44,000. And it might be some overtime here and there, but right now this officer has average pay. If you do it by the average, it was at $1,400 a week. If you do it at an average. And the numbers, I'm not making this up, the numbers are right here. $32,000 for a quarter. And this person only been here 23 weeks. So at this pace of going, if he would have done it for 52 weeks, at the same pace would have paid him $73,000. Add an officer that's supposed to be making $44,000. So what happened was I discovered this right here, and I'm like, this isn't right. All of them on paper right now, if it would have continued, was making more than the police chief. And guess who was signing off on it? The police chief had to sign off on this. And I pulled timesheets where it says 22 and a half hours of overtime, 18 hours overtime. Remind you, this person was sitting here saying he wasn't hired to patrol. 10 hours overtime, 7 hours overtime, 14 hours, 24 hours overtime, 14. He just goes on. But this officer, $30,000 at 25 weeks, over $59,000 on track to make. The numbers don't lie. This is Benjamin still going on. These are not numbers that I made up. These are numbers that were brought to my attention that I pulled from the clerk. All right? These are facts. When it's all said and done, everybody was making more than the chief. The chief is salaried at $55,000 at the time. I put it, I don't want to mislead anybody. The way it's supposed to be set up. The chief signed off on the overtime and it gets turned in. And if there is something that needs to be addressed with the council or whatever, it needs to be brought to our attention. Doesn't need to be brought to our attention after all of this stuff is getting paid out. And then at this point, people wonder why the town can't grow, why the town can't have cars. Why is this? Why is that? This is why the money was going out in overtime, said Benjamin. He said the police department had sent a proposed budget of their own to the town, asking for an increase in their budget of $423,000 to more than $611,000. They need the overtime money. Some of the proposed expenses included $317,000 in salaries, $100,000 for new cars, $5,000 for furniture. Benjamin said the police department's proposed budget called for $97,000 in overtime wages. He said the council agreed they couldn't afford those increases, but he added they did give the chief a $5,000 raise that brought this pay up to $55,000 a year. Quote, we tried our best to do what we can to make the town be successful. At the end of the day, I never had no hate against any of the officers. I had nothing but love. Nothing but love. Everything I done was nothing but love. And it hurts me. It does hurt me for them to turn around and do this and go out and people saying that I ran the police department. There's a lot of people that know the truth. But at the end of the day, I know I did everything right. I did my job. And they had every right to come to me and ask me anything they want to ask me. End quote. Now, it goes down from there. You can read it in the description box. He talks now about a child getting out of the patrol car with a book bag. And I guess what it was a police officer picking up their child, his or her, and wanted to make sure it wasn't happening on an everyday basis because that's a possible liability to the town. A town of 2,000. Hey, I pick my kid up from school. I take her home in the police car. We've seen it in movies and TV shows. I mean, it's, hey, I don't know, man. But he also talks about a hidden microphone in the middle of the town council where the mayor used to sit, and in the courtroom and so forth. But the bottom line is, remember this story, the 5 police officers and the chief quit over disputes with a councilman, and they wouldn't name the councilman. Well, I think now the councilman has a name. I think, and I believe after this story here, it's Harry Benjamin. That's the town councilman that the cops had a problem with. But I don't know. It sounds like maybe the police were the problem. A cop saying they didn't hire me to patrol. They hired me for my knowledge. They hired me to ask me questions. That's why I'm waiting on them to ask me a question. What the, and then getting overtime because he's got to sit and wait for someone to ask him a question because he's an encyclopedia of knowledge. Boy, I tell you what, any of you that live in McCole, South Carolina, y'all got problems.